I'll give it one more minute.
You've got 7 o'clock, so whenever you're ready, Mayor.
I'll give it one more minute in case Greg is trying to log on.
We're still waiting. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Just for a few of us, we lost Ruth this morning.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that. I see Greg is with us now.
Thank you.
I see those flowers there. Is that, who are those flowers?
It's an Elizabeth Patterson. Doesn't have any audio, so.
Oh, I wasn't aware that she was given permission to join us.
Anybody with call details is able to enter them into the screen so that they can join by video.
Okay, but does not have audio access.
Correct, does not have audio.
Cannot participate. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay, the meeting of the July 21st, 2020, the July 21st, 2020 meeting of the City of Oneonta Common Council is hereby called to order. I will call the roll. Councilmember Murphy,
Sorry, here.
Councilmember Davies,
Here.
Councilmember Risberger,
Here.
Councilmember Lepari Shu,
Here.
Councilmember Carson,
Here.
Councilmember Harrington,
Here.
Councilmember Rafter,
Here.
Councilmember Drenick.
Here.
Okay, give me a moment to switch screens. Okay, a number of things I want to talk about this evening. First, the good news. I want to thank Mark Drenick and everybody else who was involved in our first Main Street street closing, our first Survive Then Thrive effort to support our local businesses. It appeared to be a resounding success. So congratulations, Mark, well done. I spent some time down there in the afternoon. The sun was out, everything seemed festive, bright color umbrellas. People, everybody I saw was smiling. I think they were smiling behind their masks. It looked that way by looking at their eyes. I stopped in at almost all of the local businesses, restaurants. Without an exception, their response was positive. They thought it was a great event. They were glad that we're having it. Most reported an uptick in business than what they had been having on a typical Saturday recently. We were successful in bringing enough people down to make it work, but not bringing too many people down. That's why we didn't have artists pop-up tents. We didn't have musicians playing. We would have loved to, but we'll get there. We'll get there. We're not out of the woods. We need to take it one step at a time. We can't attract big crowds. I know it's going to get better and better. This was a first run. This Saturday is going to be even better. I've only heard positive things. I haven't heard anything but positive things. A long time since it's been something I've heard only positive things on. So to everybody who's involved in it, great job. Really, really good event. Well done. Not so good news. We have had 4 new cases of COVID-19 positive tests of residents of the city of Oneonta within the last 24 hours. That is striking because we only had I could be wrong on this, but it seemed like only one new case over the past approximately 5 months. In the same time frame or a day earlier, the village of Cooperstown had 3 new cases. Heidi Bond, the director of our county Department of Health, put out a press release just this evening, and I just want to read 2 sentences from it. Heidi said, "Our current increase in cases rivals the beginning of the outbreak, with 15 cases reported in people tested between July 1 and July 20. There are currently 4 people hospitalized, with 3 people requiring intensive care." This should serve as a wake-up call. We are not out of the woods. Everybody's been feeling a little more relaxed, a little safer. We've had a relatively safe stretch. Or a lot of people's guards have come down. I think we need to recognize that we're not there yet. And for the city of Oneonta, we are going to enter into a very crucial phase with our college students coming back next month and the potential for the K through 12 schools to reopen. I have no shortage of things to do over the next 4 or 5 weeks, but I can tell you my number one priority, I will be spending most of my time working with our 2 colleges, working with the police department, working with our student landlords, working with our bars and restaurant owners, and making sure that we have a very strong plan to keep everybody safe, both our college students and our year-round population, when all of the college students return. We're going to have 7,000 college students return at the same time from states all over the country. I think if we all know, if you've been watching television or reading the newspaper, that has not gone well in many other communities that have let their guard down. So we have no reason to be feeling complacent on this. I will give you an update on some of the things that have been going on lately. I have been in continuous communication with both our college presidents, President Morris and President Dragovich. Hartwick College makes up only 20% of our student population. Almost all of Hartwick College students live on the dorm. Hartwick College is greatly discouraging students from leaving campus. They will have all of their exits and entrances monitored to help discourage people from leaving campus. So Hartwick College is going to be easier to monitor than SUNY. With SUNY, half of the students, about 3,000, live off campus. So you clearly cannot close the campus and discourage people from leaving campus. A few steps that we've taken so far. We had a good meeting last week. Police Chief Brenner, Fire Chief Pigeon, Dave Risberger joined us. Our OPT Transit Director, Dave O'Tailing, was on the call. We had a good meeting with President Morris and some of her staff. Here are some of the things we came up with. I have proposed what I'm calling is a local control room, and I'm monitoring it after the state control rooms that the governor set up for the regions. I have proposed that it will consist of SUNY students, faculty, and staff, as well as city officials. We will meet a minimum of once a week to monitor how things are going. If there are any problems that are reported, this group, including the students, will need to take ownership of the problems, and we'll need to talk about changes we need to make and ways that we need to act in order to prevent reoccurrences. When I said they'll meet once a week, that means if we have a problem that's of real concern, we won't wait. We'll meet immediately the next day. This will be a very important effort to address any problems, reports of house parties, whatever it may be, as they occur, in a very public way. I'm going to ask that these meetings be live streamed and recorded so that both the student population at the college as well as the residents of the city of Oneonta can watch them. We are talking right now about transportation. We have had some discussion from the Student Association about providing transportation during the evenings and nights to downtown Oneonta. We are not at this time, inclined to provide hours late into the night for transportation. We are continuing to have discussions, but we will set the guidelines as to when we'll provide transportation. We're likely to cut off transportation between the college and downtown earlier in the evening, whether it's 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, that's to be worked out. We don't want to encourage students coming into downtown to party, to go to bars late at night. The SUNY Oneonta is creating a contract with their students, a behavioral contract that everyone will have to sign, which includes consequences. I received a first draft copy of it today. I asked that we receive a copy of it because I want us to have the opportunity to provide input into it and to make certain that it adequately addresses off-campus behaviors as well as on-campus behaviors. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but will be shortly. The police chief and I have been talking about and will continue to talk about enforcement. I think we're both on the same page. We're going to take a zero tolerance approach to this. If bars do not meet the guidelines, we're going to report it to the State Liquor Authority. State Liquor Authority has also stated they're going to take a very hard approach on this. We're going to do our best to be tough on any types of gatherings that are inappropriate, whether it's house parties, in the street, downtown, whatever it may be. This is, I normally preach tolerance for the younger generation, but this is not a time for it. The stakes are too high. We see what's happening around the country. We're already seeing an uptick here. We cannot afford to do this wrong. So my efforts over the next 4 or 5 weeks are going to be focused on the priority of having every plan we possibly can in place to be ready to keep our residents safe and our college students safe upon this return. I believe that this is maybe one of the biggest challenges that we have ever faced. And there's no kidding ourselves that it's going to be easy. It's going to take everybody working together on it. It means people in their homes, if you live in a block like I do with students next door, when they arrive, stop and talk to them. Let them know, that your family's safety and health is at risk here. Let them know how important it is to you that they follow the same precautions that we've been following for the past 4 or 5 months. This is something that we all need to, and we need to role model. We're going to get tougher on making sure people who are downtown in the business district and crowded places are wearing masks, because it's going to be hard enough to get young people to change their behavior. If they arrive here and they see that we don't have a culture of respecting the risks, we can't expect them to. So we need to be stepping up enforcement of ourselves in the coming weeks to be prepared for this as well. So this is a serious challenge. I think we're up for it, but it's not going to be easy. The other challenge that we are facing is testing. We do not have adequate testing in Oneonta or Otsego County. Reagents are being redirected to the states, to the regions of the country that are in the greatest need right now, which is not us. It is typically taking 10 to 14 days for results to come back from tests, which tells you that the 4 people who tested positive in the city of Oneonta in the last 2 days were tested 10 to 14 days ago. That is not a good thing. I've been in communication with the governor's office Mohawk Valley Region officials as recently as yesterday. We are working to develop a plan to provide some state pop-up mobile testing sites that could move, maybe be one day in the city of Oneonta, one day in a rural location in the county. The state is on board with that concept. However, there are many details to work out before it can be implemented. The hope is that we can implement that, which will increase testing. But there are, as everything, the devil's in the details. But I will continue to work with Albany and our Mohawk Valley officials to do that, because we can't handle the testing we have now, let alone what are we going to do when we have 7,000 college students come back. Last thing I just wanted to bring up is I just want to give you an update. The Community Advisory Board to work with the Oneonta Police Department. I've been talking to the colleges about their representation, talking to the NAACP. I should have the names at our next council meeting to present to you of my recommendations to participate in that. That's all I have for today. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them before I move on. Councilmember Murphy?
Yes, just a quick question. How are the colleges going about testing for when students is every student coming back required to take a test before they get to campus?
No, they are not. The college plans have no testing other than testing upon exposure or symptoms. Two reasons for that. One, there is not adequate testing, and the cost is prohibitive. So that is not good news, but that's where it stands. Councilmember Risberger?
Yeah, Gary, are the county's ICU beds, are they only located in Bassett or are they at Fox? And have we been in contact, or does the hospital have any plan to keep us up to date as the ICU bed levels change?
I believe we have ICU at Fox as well, and well, that's information we certainly can get. They are required to report that information. Every hospital in the region reports that information every single day to the Mohawk Valley region. Those numbers are aggregated. I see them every day on a regional basis. What I can tell you on a regional basis, I haven't looked at count or local numbers. On a regional basis, the numbers remain good. I think as of today, there were about 45% of the ICU beds throughout the region, the 6-county region, were empty. I think that our threshold is about 30%. That if we drop down to 30%, we're in trouble. We've been up around 45% are empty.
You and I have already talked. The only other issue I have is, and you're aware of this, is my concerns with the testing. If we're not able to get testing results for 10 to 14 days, and I know that the college and the high school and elementary schools are dependent on the percent positivity to determine whether they open or stay open. And if we can't get those results for 2 weeks, I'm worried we're going to be in trouble.
I agree. It's a problem. That's why I've been advocating so strongly for increased access to testing here in the city and the county. Now, I'm not getting any resistance that there's a need. You know, the problem is that there's a shortage of testing reagents. Again, they're all being shipped to Texas and California and the South that have a dire need right now. Councilmember Carson, did I see your hand go up?
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier in your report, you said that you and the police chief had talked and that you guys were on the same page about getting tough. Are you referencing that the executive order that the governor gave out, 202.1, I don't know, what, I forgot the last two, but that says that if you're in a public space and you can't maintain your social distance of 6 foot, that you're to have your mask on. Can you give me an example of what's going to happen to our city residents and I'm assuming our college students are city residents while they're here. So what is the picture for our city residents if they're downtown or anywhere in the city and they are observed either by another resident or by the police department without having their mask on and
Yeah.
they're within that 6 foot?
That's a very good question, Len. Here's how I interpret it for the city here. If you are out walking around in a quiet residential neighborhood, I don't think it's important that you're wearing a mask. Some people do, some people don't, and I think that's okay. If you see somebody coming, you have plenty of time to walk to the other side of the street or avoid them. I don't see any problem there. If you're going to be in a business district such as downtown or some of the other business districts, you cannot predict that you will always be 6 feet away from somebody. So that's why, our approach is going to be, if you are in one of our business districts, you are expected to wear a mask. Now, I've asked the police chief to see that all of the officers carry a supply of cloth masks on them. I was able to obtain 4,000 masks for the city. Their approach will not be to go over and confront somebody in a negative way. Their approach will be to say, I see you don't have a mask. Let me give you one for free because they're required here. Certainly, if we get somebody who then gives an officer a hard time, refuses, it becomes a different story. But, it's going to be a positive approach. I'll let the chief add to that.
Yeah, we strongly feel that just using a positive approach and offering a mask to somebody, they'll get the idea. They'll get the idea with that as well. As far as a hard line, I think what we're talking about as far as house parties and things like that as well with those, we're not gonna cut any slack on those because they just know better. We'll just put it that way. As I've said it before, we're pretty fortunate that everybody around here really wants to do the right thing. And I think with a gentle reminder, they will.
Thank you both for clarifying that. And it's a really good answer because I was just a little concerned that maybe we were going to get, a heavy stick, and I'm glad that we're not. Thank you.
I will say that most people in the city have been great. That's why our numbers have been kept down. I was downtown for a while Saturday afternoon. There were very, very few people not wearing a mask. Mark did a great job setting up health stations, I think he called them. There were tables, half a dozen tables throughout Main Street with piles of the cloth masks on it that we were able to acquire. People could help themselves to one. There were also bottles of sanitizers. People could help themselves to sanitizer. It was very well done. It was a good atmosphere. I think I saw one person without a mask. It was somebody who, is a known entity in the city who, has some cognitive issues. I went over and spoke with him about it, showed him where he could get a mask. But the compliance was great. People were really complying. Anybody else? Okay. Let's move on with the agenda. One other thing. Sad news, and Councilmember Rafter was filling me in today. We lost two really prized citizens of the city of Oneonta this week. One is Alice Siegfried. Most of us know Alice. She was a potter by trade. lived on the corner of Center and Church, had a beautiful garden that she took care of. She rode her bike around town. I think Alice was an Oneonta treasure. She was a fighter her whole life for for civil rights, for the rights of all, for peace. She'll be missed. She was one of a kind, and Alice was an Oneonta legend. I think almost all of us have some piece of her pottery, a mug or something, in our home. I know I do, and it means more now when I drink coffee out of it in the morning. Also, Ruth Allen passed away today, I'm just told. Ruth was the wife of Dennis Finn, who had worked with the Airport Commission for years and the chair of the Planning Commission. Ruth herself did much volunteer work for the city of Oneonta. Ruth was on the library, Huntington Memorial Library Board. She had chaired the Housing Task Force back when Mayor Miller was here. And more recently, she was on Dave Risberger's Survive Then Thrive committee, just very recently. So two people who contributed very much to the city in many ways. Alice and Ruth, we will certainly miss them. I'm sorry to see them go. All right, I'm going to go now to board and commission reports. Environmental Board, Councilmember Davies, did you have a meeting?
Yes, we did, Mayor. We met last Tuesday for the first time since early March, and we met thanks to Carrie. She did a great job at setting everything up, and it worked wonderfully, and I appreciate her giving that time to the board and setting everything up. The highlights. So one is that the community garden, despite the pandemic, is running very well. All the plots are being utilized. People are actively growing things. It's been a resounding success. So that's been very exciting to watch that. Two pieces that were up for discussion. One of them was beekeeping. The last meeting in March, a citizen came to us and asked us why we didn't have a beekeeping ordinance to allow beekeeping in the city, and asked us to investigate it. Say us, I should say the board. So that was looked at during the time between the March meeting and last Tuesday, and the Environmental Board will probably be putting up some type of suggestion or recommendations for legislation about beekeeping. So should they do that at their next meeting, I'll be bringing that forward to the Legislative Committee. Along the same lines, there was quite a bit of discussion on, and I think Dave Mersey will probably correct me on the wording, but it's that easement between the road and the sidewalk. Apparently there's been some issues with trees being chopped down in that, because the landowner feels that they have a right to be able to chop those trees down, when the Environmental Board has been actively trying to plant trees in that particular median. So I think they're going to be looking for some greater clarification on rules around that, as well as perhaps bringing something forward that will try to get greater clarity on how trees in that particular median should be treated for the future. And that's really all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions regarding the Environmental Board? Okay. Planning Commission, Councilmember Risberger.
Yes, thank you. We met on the 15th, and it was the first meeting since February. We had somebody that had been on the docket in February and was patiently waiting for us to meet again. So that was the property at 13 Carson Road. They were looking to operate a bed and breakfast at the property. There were actually no, there was in the area for it. And the site plan was approved, and the seeker apparently was approved back in February, so that went through rather quickly. The new business, we have at 443 Main Street. The applicant is looking to construct an 8,400 square foot building with 12 dwelling units, so 12 apartments there. This is the place next to Humphreys. And there was some mild opposition to it, some concern about the number of parking spaces that were there, that were allotted. I think there's room for 14 parking spaces, but these are 1-bedroom apartments, and each apartment in the lease, it's they're very well aware that they'll only have 1 parking space. So that was approved. They were also, just so everybody's aware, the target for those apartment buildings is retired couples or young professionals, which is both of those groups are looking for housing here. 30 East End Ave, there was a construction of a residential garage at the property, and that went through without a problem. And then the Taylor's gas station on Main Street at 470, 476 Main Street. There's a new owner. This is a family that owns 2 other gas stations, one in Milford and one up in Cooperstown. They own believe they're Apple Express. And they are expanding the existing station from 375 square feet, which is hard to believe for a gas station these days, to 1,500 square feet, because they feel that with the way gas is sold nowadays, it's very hard to run a gas station business without selling other items there. So there was some discussion on that, some concern about the size of the building and where they were going to put it, but ultimately it passed. And the last item was 110 Chestnut Street. This was the proposed demolition of a garage structure, and it's going to be replaced with landscaping, and that went through fine. And that was it.
Questions from anyone? Okay, thank you very much. Committee reports. Legislative Committee, Councilmember Rafter. You're muted, John.
The Legislative Committee met last week, and only one item was on the agenda that had to do with the proposal for changing the short-term rental ordinance or the code. It was decided at the meeting to proceed with bringing the legislation to council, and that has now been recast in terms of a legislative format, and I believe everyone has received it. If I'm wrong on that, let me know, or that shouldn't be. My suggestion is to deal with this in some other way. Please, everyone, read it. I have actually been talking to residents in my ward, Zone 1 and 2, because part of the code change would permit regular permanent residents to get a short-term rental permit. And so talk to people about that. And in some ways that's important now, because it's been quite a few months since we have met in a format where people could come into a meeting and participate in the meeting. Even tonight, we can't hear from people very well at all. And I think that it would behoove us to really consider what the major changes are in terms of the R1 and R2 changes. And that's it. You're muted, Gary.
Risberger?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to let everybody know that the legislation that went out for what John was talking about, I read through it and I realized that they made the changes, Stephen made the changes that we were suggesting to make before pushing it forward to the council under F1 and F2, I believe they were. But what didn't happen was the definition of permanent residence. That didn't change early on in the legislation. So I sent Stephen a note just to make sure that it matches up. So you may be getting a new copy in the next couple days.
Also, is that something, Gary, that will be laid before the committee, but will the planning commission be reviewing it before?
Yes, I think it'll go to the planning commission. They will have an opportunity to, they just make a recommendation.
Yes.
You know, they don't have an authority on it, but we're required by our charter to allow them to make a recommendation, any change to the zoning code. So before the council reviews it, we'll let the council receive the planning commission's recommendation. So
Okay.
the process will take some time. Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll go to Finance and Human Resources Committee. Councilmember Carson?
Thank you, Mayor. We met Monday, July 13th. All committee members were present. We started off the meeting with our Director of Finance giving us an overall view of both formally and informally of how our budget process will happen for the 21 budget. Then we moved on to your consent agenda number 8 with Municity, which is a software company that our code enforcement office has been using for several years. The company has kept our particular software, I guess, Band-Aid for the last few years. And so now they're at this point where they needed a whole new software system. So what's before you tonight on number 8 is a whole new system, which on my notes, and committee members, please help me out. I wrote down that GIS is a function that would now be added, and that's something that the engineering department could also utilize. They being the engineering department and the finance department, talked to us about the Glenwood Creek culvert, the positives, the negatives. Obviously, it's a lot of money. This council had approved moving forward to have the New York State DOT engineering spend about $40,000. I think we're actually closer to 50,000. But Greg, if Greg's on, jump in. Doing the engineering, they now have a better look at what the project scope is going to be. And they now have determined that the project, even though we have a $690,000 grant, the overall project is looking at a price tag of just over $1 million. I believe it was $1,058,000 is what I wrote down. Also before you, you'll see 2 Parks Department. One was promoted within, another, what my note says is that we hired from outside. You also see 2 individuals that are hired as part-time firefighters. And there was an issue with the clothing allowance or process of the clothing allowance with our PBA and the MOA, that both sides have come into agreement. We'll take care of that clothing allowance. I think that's it. If any of the other committee members have anything to add that I forgot, please chime in. If there's any other questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's go to the consent agenda. One, motion that the council approves the minutes of the regular meeting held July 7th, 2020. 2, motion that the council approves the warrants totaling $275,293.77. and that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for payment as presented. 3, motion that the council approves the appointment of laborer Justin Hill to the position of maintenance worker with a new annual base pay of $29,773. This would be effective July 22, 2020, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. 4, motion that the council approves the appointment of Travis Barlow to the position of maintenance worker, base annual salary of $29,773, effective on a higher date to be determined after July 22nd, 2020, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service and pre-employment background screening requirements. 5, motion that the council approves the appointment of Jeffrey Mundrick II to the position of part-time firefighter. This is a non-competitive position at an hourly pay rate of $14.90 as established by the city's collective bargaining agreement with the Oneonta Professional Firefighters Local 2408 of the IAFF. This would be effective on a higher date to be determined after July 22, 2020, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service and pre-employment background screening requirements. 6, motion that the council approves the appointment of Jonathan Magyar to the position of part-time firefighter, again, a non-competitive position, at an hourly pay rate of $14.90, as established by the city's collective bargaining agreement with the Oneonta Professional Firefighters Local 2408 of the IAFF. This would be effective on a higher date to be determined after July 22nd, 2020, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service and pre-employment background screening requirements. 7, motion that the council authorizes the mayor to sign the memorandum of agreement with the city of Oneonta PBA, modifying Article 7, Section 8 of the collective bargaining agreement to increase the amount of the 2020 clothing, equipment, and technology allowance to include the employee share of payroll taxes, subject to review by the city's Special Labor Council. 8, motion that the council approves a budget transfer to fund the code enforcement's municipal software upgrade. That would be moving $27,500 from the general fund contingency to the equipment and capital outlay line. That concludes the consent agenda. I will take any requests to remove any of the 8 motions from the consent agenda. Any? I hear none. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Motion by Councilmember Carson, second by Councilmember Risberger. I will call the vote. Councilmember Murphy,
Aye.
Councilmember Davies,
Aye.
Councilmember Risberger,
Aye.
Councilmember Lepari Shu,
Aye.
Councilmember Carson,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Rafter,
Sorry, aye.
and Councilmember Drenick.
Aye.
Okay, the consent agenda passes. Thank you very much. We have one additional motion. I know I gave the council the background on this. I will repeat it just for those who may be listening to the meeting. Elizabeth Patterson had approached me a while ago to ask if she could post a Black Lives Matter display on the fence that is on the Lower Main Street viaduct that goes over the rail tracks. I told her that we could not approve that because that fence is not city property. I believe it's the property of the state. She then asked about Muller Plaza. I didn't know this prior, but I was notified that the railing, and she needs a railing for a display, it's not freestanding to affix it to, that the railing around the back of Muller Plaza is not owned by the city, it's owned by the Clarion Hotel. So looking for another railing to affix or display to. She asked about the Main Street railing facing the Westcott lot. Now, if it was Muller Plaza, we have a permitting process for that. It would have gone through the regular permitting process. It wouldn't have required council approval. Being that we have no process in place, any permitting process for affixing something to a city fence or railing, I felt that it was something to bring to the council. So that's why it is here. I will read the motion. Motion that the council permits Elizabeth Patterson to affix a photographic display supporting Black Lives Matter to the city fence on Main Street adjoining the Westcott lot. The display will run for 1 week, beginning July 25th, 2020. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Councilmember Davies, second by Councilmember Lepari Shu. Discussion. Councilmember Drenick.
So I'm very glad to see Elizabeth is listening. I wonder if this is an opportunity to educate the public a little bit about what the city of Oneonta and the police department are doing to kind of be the change. I really get this. I understand this. I really, really do. But I feel like we could put a panel alongside of this that maybe provides some information about the Community Advisory Board and other outreach to the community that the police department is doing, and potentially engage the public through contact information to engage the police department in other things that are important within our community, and especially our minority community in Oneonta. So although I truly do the intent of all of this, I feel like there's an opportunity to add to this a positive messaging about Oneonta, about the city of Oneonta and its police department. We are trying to be the change. So the inference without that is that potentially, the city of Oneonta might also be, something that might be lumped into the larger problem that the country is dealing with. And I feel like we're committed to doing something here. And maybe the entire community doesn't know that. And this might be an opportunity with a single panel. And Elizabeth, I would be happy personally to work with you and with the city police to devise something. I see that July 25th is the time frame for it, where we could put that up and adjoining. So it would be something that came from both the police and Elizabeth and her group that provided information to the community. And I think that might give it a little bit of kind of turn the corner aspect.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mark. Any further discussion? Mr. City Attorney has his hand up.
What I'd like the council to consider is not necessarily the content issue so much as the practical issues. If we're talking about a new venue that's never been available before for this type of expression, Muller Plaza has already been designated for that purpose. We already have a permitting process and we already have a history of the process for doing it there. If we have to decide if we're going to start using a new venue Is this going to create a precedent for the next person, next entity, next group to use that spot? Is this going to be a new spot in perpetuity for anybody who comes in this one? What's the rationale going to be for other uses of the nature that so far we've confined to the Muller Plaza? The second issue is it's a new type of display. All the other displays that have been in the plaza have been unitized, for lack of a better term. And so I'm looking at practical issues. Again, we already have a display permitting process. We have a location for it, and the reason that this is being requested is because for artistic reasons or for presentation or aesthetic reasons, the person who's doing it does not want to conform to the current process that's already in place in a location that's already in place. So although I understand the desire of the council to provide an opportunity for this to be done, my concern is that we already have that. And that if we're going to say, okay, we're going to be doing it, we're now going to let people put things on fences, that understand that it will be difficult in the future to say that this is a one-off, and that we give special consideration to special people at special times and not to other people who have issues which they certainly believe have significant impact on the community and on the nation as a whole. So again, I'm worried less about the content than I am about the process. So if that could be just for consideration, again, the council can do what it chooses. But those are my concerns. And if it's going to be done, it should be done within the context of the permitting, a permitting process that's already in place. Carrie, I saw had prepared something that included defense. I'm always concerned about mission creep. That's all. That one thing happens and then another thing happens, and then we have multiple venues for doing multiple things, and that's my case.
David, could you clarify what your specific recommendation for the council action tonight or lack of action tonight is, what your recommendation is specifically?
Well, I think there should be consideration as to whether or not the council wants to expand venues for public expressions in our downtown area by doing this. Again, is my understanding, the reason that this is being expanded and moved and put here is not so much to do with the content, but with the artistic, the desire of the presenter to put it in a particular artistic mode. They could be put on 4x8 pieces of cardboard if it wouldn't not have the same aesthetic. So my concern is less to do with the content, but with the aesthetic. If the council wishes to, I just want them to understand the consequences of their actions. If they wish to expand in downtown a venue for doing this because that's what they want to do, and that they understand the implications of doing it, that's within their prerogative. But if they're saying, I just want them to get it, that's all. I just want to understand.
So
because it seems sure.
If I could just attempt to summarize what you're saying and tell me if I'm wrong, which you've done before,
make it sound normal.
which wouldn't be the first time you've told me I'm wrong. Is what you're saying that your recommendation is, if they choose to approve this tonight, they should follow up with establishing guidelines and a permitting process for all future use of such uses?
That's it. Again, because what's happening is they're creating a precedent for something that has not done before. And if we open that venue, then the box is open. And if they want to do that, that's fine. But then we need to figure out how it is that we're going to do it, how long it's going to be up, you know, all the issues that we do that we sort of ironed out to date on the Muller Plaza venue. That's all. We already have a mechanism in place for that.
Okay, so that's a recommendation from the
Correct.
attorney, that if you choose to approve this tonight, he recommends you follow up with the establishment of guidelines and a permitting process for future such uses. Any further discussion? Councilmember Carson.
So the city attorney just gave a clarification to kind of what I was alluding to this afternoon. Are we prepared? And we're not. So I'm not against this, but what I am against is the procedure is not in place. We are setting a precedent utilizing city property. Where will it end? And I think that's what David was getting at. It won't just end at the Westcott lot. Somebody can come to us now and say, well, geez, I want to have my public display down in one of our parks or anywhere where there's city property. And I just think maybe this is an issue that should go back to planning as a committee and address this. I think, Mayor, you said it earlier tonight that you had talked to Elizabeth quite a while ago. So this isn't a pressing issue, meaning it's not life or death today. I would just ask that this goes back to the committee and allows the committee to discuss the ramifications of what will happen once, if this was to pass through tonight, how many other organizations are going to come forward or individuals will come forward saying, I want to express my personal beliefs or values on city property. So I agree with the city attorney. I think this is setting a precedent.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Davies.
Yeah, I had a entire long thing about content prepared. To me, that's what's most important here. I recognize the process and certainly appreciate it. Mr. Merzig about that, but I think the content also needs to be put into perspective. And I understand in terms of Mark, your concerns about kind of juxtaposing what we're doing as a community with police violence. But why I think this is a really important display is there's other things taking place here. When we're talking about police violence, oftentimes that began because somebody called the police on somebody that looks suspicious in the first place. And so I think that this sends a message also about how we might want to think about one another and not see Black folks walking down the streets of our neighborhood as somehow being suspicious, that we need to call the police simply because they exist. So I think that this serves to remind us about that every day. Thirdly, I guess, I also think it reminds each one of us that we need to think about our own ways that we contribute to racism on an ongoing basis. And there's subtle ways, there's small ways, there's everyday ways, and there's big ways. But it might be a daily reminder about each and every one of us, how we need to live with one another better within our community. And then lastly, it's the systemic racism that we cannot deny that it exists. It exists within our laws, within our housing, within our schools, it exists. And we need to address that. So to me, the content of this message is about reminding each and every one of us about our commitment to each other, about our commitment to trying to unlearn our racism, to confront systemic oppression, systemic racism, and this is a symbol for that. Now, the process piece aside, but I'll certainly hit that. If this council feels that it's problematic to use that particular area, then what I'd suggest, Elizabeth, is maybe you and I can talk and others to figure out how we can utilize the Muller Plaza in a way that would be work for you, as well as be able to bidding process so we can get this up. The content is important and it's timely and it needs to put out there, especially as we have everyone kind of congregating in downtown on Saturdays, to remind each and every one of us about our responsibility to one another. If we're going to have freedom in America, we're going to have freedom only when everyone has freedom. So that is my kind of content-laced statement, as well as trying to get at some process. I think this is an important issue, and I don't want to get us stuck in whether this is problematic to open up the Westcott lot, and I recognize the problems there, but the message is too important to let us get stuck in where it's going to be and how we might have to go about crafting this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Risberger.
Yep. Out of the 8 years I've been on council, this is only the second item that I know of that came up involving the fence along the Westcott lot. And the first time it was not really a discussion with the council. It was simply, I believe, hanging winter clothes at various spots around downtown, and it was just done. It became problematic for other reasons. So I do see a reason for bringing this to legislative committee. I don't know that it would go to planning, Len, necessarily. It seems to me to make more sense to go to legislative. But I agree wholeheartedly with Mark, what he just said, with both Marks, actually. And I like the idea that Mark Drenick brought up, because I think Oneonta has taken some positive steps, not just in the last couple months, but in the last few years. And I think the police chief and has done a tremendous job. And I think that the community needs to know what's going to be happening with the task force and what they're going to be working on. I think that's very important. I for one have wrestled with this one the last few days, but I'm prepared tonight to vote for it, and then take it back to legislative to make to build the process for if that fence is going to be utilized for anything in the future. But I'd be willing to give it the okay this evening, especially since I believe it'll be up there we said for 1 week. So I think that'll be a good trial run to see how things go, and then we can move forward with legislation for any future displays.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Murphy?
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I would just like to voice my support for this. Elizabeth, thank you for doing this. All too often, we've seen this dozens, if not hundreds of times. Someone who is minding their own business, a person of color, is shot dead or is reported for walking their dogs in Central Park. People get very upset about it for 2 or 3 days, and then it dies down. I am very proud of our community. I think our police force, I think that our council, especially in the past few years, as Member Risberger said, we've made a lot of progress. That being said, we still have a long ways to go. And I'm not just pinning this on Oneonta. It's an American problem that we've been dealing with for hundreds of years. So I think that it is a very important, very timely piece of art, and I do support it. In terms of what City Attorney Merzig said, as well as several other council members, particularly in regards to legislation going forward, I'd be happy to look at that as well. But thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Hello.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yeah, just a couple things. I know we have to look at the permitting process. I don't know, our city attorney, if we pass something, is it easy to go back and then write a law for what we just passed, or is it easier to do it up front and then pass? I mean, that would be the one question I would have. I just think if we doing it back the best way. I see other communities out there that have done something, and then somebody else has come forward and want to do something on the similar lines, and then they say no, and then they're under a lot of, there's problems that way. I just don't want to make sure we don't get into problems. I have no problem with this. It is I understand the timeliness of it. Mark, I think you said it very well. I don't think anybody can really add on to that. And why I'm supporting doing this is, I don't know how many times we've always told our high school students and stuff, you're part of this community, reach out to us. and, so we can do stuff with you. And most of the things that came across our email today in the way of supporting, it's a sophomore from Oneonta High School. It's I think there was a junior from Oneonta High School in there. We had I think a sophomore from Oneonta State University that wrote in from Norwich. But most of it came from our high school students, and that is very impressive to me, especially while they're not in school, to take a stance. So, but I just want to make sure that as we do this, I'm going to, again, to the city attorney, I think he got kicked off when I said, as we do this, if we pass this tonight, what safeguards should be done tonight to help us in the process of, as we write it, as we backtrack to write it? Because I'm not sure backtracking to write something is going to, I just see a little bit of problem there, but if it can ease me just a little bit, I mean, that might be helpful.
David, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I got cut off for a second, so I didn't hear the whole thing. But the only thing that I can mention, I don't know if you've all seen it, but Deputy Clerk Harrington had put together an addendum to the current permitting process that simply added in the Westcott lot fence as an additional site, but then still follows the regular mechanism for the insurance, post of insurance, and appropriate party and the permitting fee, again, exactly as what is being currently done at Muller Plaza. So if you're, I got to jump in here for a second and talk to Councilmember Davies. You have to understand that the government, that the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States provides equal protection under the law and right to freedom of speech to lots of folks. And the government cannot pick and choose the message that it allows people to do in public forum. There are parameters, but I understand the strength and the feeling that everyone has. But what you have to remember is that as far as freedom of speech is concerned, the government has to be very careful in public places to make sure that the freedoms protected under the Constitution of the United States are provided to all comers. So as I said, I'm worried more about the venue than I am about the content. But understand, if we say we're allowing this content in this situation because we agree with this content, and someone else comes along later on and wishes to have other content that they feel as strongly about, and it's not illegal, the government has to provide equal opportunity for those things. So that being said, if we're getting back to the question that Councilmember Harrington presented, my recommendation would be that we follow that we use the current procedure that's already in place for Muller Plaza and simply extend it to the Westcott lot, because then we're within a framework. Whether you want to do that long term or not is something that the council can revisit. But that would be my recommendation. I don't know if that answers your question, Scott. Hope so.
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
I think Councilmember Rafter, I can't tell if you're swatting flies or looking to comment.
Let me help you. I've decided to still myself. I have a couple of points, but I just agree with what David was saying, in that if the legislative committee gets together, the legislative committee doesn't write law. David would have to do that. And I think his proposal is to say, extend this to the fence. And I think that's, to me, that makes more sense than to have the legislative committee gather and try to draft a law. I also am noting that this will be done and gone before the students return, which may or may not be, much of a full message about who Oneonta or what Oneonta is, where it stands on things, and including or not including the students, and doing this in a lull time, and doing this where there'll be fewer people having a chance to look at this. Little concerned. As far as Mueller Plaza is concerned, we also have the farmers markets that are there. And if this overlaps 2 Saturdays, they have been doing the farmers market pretty frequently, and they could be disadvantaged if it's not quite clear what's going on and where people have to be to actually see this. One other thing that came to mind was we're talking about where we have jurisdiction. And I don't know what it might mean. I know the wall of the History Center, for example, is proximate to downtown, and it's a private property and can hang or not hang things there. I think perhaps we need to review that, but there may be some other places besides city property where we would perhaps be handicapped in some way, shape, or form by a previous experience that opens up city property to this. However, Mueller Plaza, because it can be applied to by Black Lives Matter advocation or Confederate flag hanging, I think that David had brought up that point that freedom of speech, et cetera, does open things up to just a variety of things. The last piece has to do with damage. We've seen damages done in broad daylight and at night to Black Lives Matter painted on streets. And the protection of this this display bears watching. And it's it'll be up for 24/7 a day for a week. And I'm concerned that damage could ensue, which just changes the tone of things because it would become clear that Oneonta is not a united city around things of this nature. And what gets up is torn down, destroyed, or modified in such a way that it dilutes or actually contaminates the message. So I'd like to keep those things in mind, some of which may be preventable, and some of which may actualize. So all in all, I would probably prefer the fence above the parking lot to be used, because it is not a place where the farmers market will be setting up, where other things are necessarily going on with tables on our Saturday get together, and it's a walk past place. I'm not, if we do it in that venue, I'm not concerned. I think in the sense that we'd be doing it using the same conditions we'd use in Mueller Plaza. And we'd also have the ability to rethink it right after the display is taken down. What the council give us, the council could take it away. So I'm generally in support of it. I think some of the concerns I brought up have to do with the farmers market, damage or destruction of the display. And that's probably about right. Oh, and the students being present might have a greater impact.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Lepari Shu.
Yeah, I just think before we vote on this, that it's really important for us to make it clear that this display is not anti-police. So it's not something where we need to say, oh, but our police are good, it's not anti-police, it's anti-police brutality. And I think that's something that everyone can get behind, in the fact that we do have a good police force. you know, speaks volumes. And this is really just to honor people who have not had that experience outside our community. And unfortunately, even in our history with the blacklist. I think it's important that it is posted in our community because it's not something that is always in our face. So many people in the community aren't necessarily aware of or comfortable with their role in racial issues. And so I think it's something where I think it's okay that the college students won't be here. John, I mean, I see what you're saying about greater impact, but I mean, truly, I think this would be a good thing for our hometown community to put it in perspective. Plus, that fence is kind of boring, and I know that Elizabeth is going to do a really beautiful job. So that's all I wanted to say is that, you know, this shouldn't be seen as something that's, you know, Black Lives Matter versus police. This is about honoring the people who have had, I can't even call them negative experiences because that's that's way understating, but
Tragic experience.
tragic is a good word, but experiences that we don't often have here in Oneonta, and bringing it here and making it real. And I think that it actually, if anything, highlights the fact that our police force is committed to being respectful and open-minded. And so that's all. Thanks.
Councilmember Drenick.
So I get that. So I also know we got 24 police that we want to have on our streets in Main Street. The chief and I were just talking about that a little bit earlier today. We'd love to see the police on Main Street all the more. We have our police on Main Street. They shouldn't think for one second that their story is not being also provided to the public. We have made tremendous strides, and we have made plans that the community does not know about. I look at this as being an opportunity. We may not get another opportunity. It's wonderful that Elizabeth is actually, I can see you in the gallery here, Elizabeth. And my sense of it is that I came out of art school. I know something about art. I'm not, I get it. I get Mark Davies. I get, the full impact and scope and the multiple facets of the presentation. And I wouldn't diminish that in the least. I wouldn't offer this assistance if I thought that it might. But I am, as I'm looking at you, Elizabeth, and to you, Chief, I'd be happy to sit down with both of you and create a single panel that provides in this moment an opportunity for people to learn something about what we are doing, because they don't know. We can't presume that they all know. This is an opportunity, and I don't believe, and again, Elizabeth and Chief, if you're involved in this, I feel certain that the display, wherever it may be, will have its full impact, but we'll have an opportunity to say, we get it, we are trying, we are committed to creating a better world, starting with Oneonta, and this is what we're doing here.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Carson.
So just for clarity, and City Attorney Merzick, if you would just chime in. We can pass this motion tonight with maybe an addendum saying that the same guidelines that go with Muller Plaza, the same permitting process that goes with Muller Plaza could be applied to the Westcott lot fence. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, if the motion says that. Again, like I said, I don't know if you all saw it, but Carrie had put together a proposed form for the permit that was simply an extension of the current permitting process for Muller Plaza extended to the fence.
So David, I just sent that to you and to the mayor, so not everyone has seen that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say I haven't seen that. So that
No, I
really
apologize. I thought everyone had gotten it.
Yeah, no, that kind of makes
No,
sense
that's,
to
and
me.
it's just because it was pretty shortly before the meeting. And I just wanted to get the city attorney's opinion on it before we disseminated it to everyone. And I was thinking it might go back to committee and possibly the committee would take a look at it. So, yeah, so sorry, everyone. You don't know what it's talking about.
Well,
So,
we'll
David,
talk at some point about the discussions among everybody outside the common council chambers. We'll talk
Right.
about that sometime.
So again,
But the simple answer is yes, sure. Sure
okay,
you could.
so then we're still not hampered moving forward because I recognize that there's going to be other individuals that want to have the display, the ability to have their display of art, whatever that is. They're going to come back to us. And so I don't want to be pigeonholed that we have to give in to these individuals. So do I understand this correctly, that if we pass this motion tonight with the addendum of that this motion is amended to at least following the procedures, the guidelines of what we already have established with Muller Plaza, then does that protect the common council as a legislative body moving forward, that somebody else isn't going to come against us?
Well, they may still come against the city would be in no different position than they currently are. It would
Okay.
simply relate again to an additional venue, which is what I was mentioning earlier. I mean, we already have this policy fully in place as far as the one venue of Muller Plaza is concerned. By this action, the council would be providing a new venue. And again, that doesn't mean, as the mayor mentioned, it doesn't mean that the council can't in the future withdraw that use if it turns out to be a problem. Again, you're not fixed forever. It's just important that the reasons behind the extension not be idiosyncratic, not be because of this particular message. If we're going to extend it, and we'll extend it according to all the rules that apply to everybody else. That's my concern. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It makes me feel a whole lot better, David, because I just envisioned that other groups, you can name them all night long, are going to come forward saying, hey, I want that space now. And I'm like, well, how are we going to argue against that? So,
yeah, and if we are doing that within the context of the already permitting process that we have in place, that would then provide, a capsule around it, and would make me feel much better about it, which is why I recommended that earlier.
right. So at some point, Mayor, I would like to make an amendment to this motion, but I don't know if this is the time or place yet.
You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry. Can I assume that everybody has said whatever they have to say on the subject? Elizabeth, I see your hand up. Do you have access to speak?
Do I? Can you hear me?
Apparently you do.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I really wanted to say thank you to everyone that is giving support for this. It means a whole lot to me, and even more so to many members of our community. I wanted to touch on a couple things that some of you said. One, Mr. Risticker, I think you said one other time in the 8 years that you've been here has someone asked for permission. You did say it was just winter coats. I feel like it would be sort of silly to not give the same. Sorry, I'm a little fuddled, as in I'm not very good at talking about this stuff. I think that it would be a little bit funny to say no when it seems like in general, this is not a big want, or how often are people asking for this? And I just feel like this is a really special moment. This is a really special message, and this is a really special community. And there's a lot of people that need to see this. And I think that what I think Mark Drenick said, this is a huge, huge learning curve for all of us. I think that having the community advisory board message in with the panel would be really, really helpful. And the last thing I wanted to say is that I actually had originally asked for it to go on for 3 weeks. I don't know where the 1 week came from, and this might be not the great place to pick up now. But also touching, I think, I wasn't sure if it was John said that he maybe wanted it around when the students were around. If it was up for the 3 weeks, it would be extended to when they are here about. And if it is just changing the time frame, if accepting a week is what we need to do, that is totally fine. I appreciate the message being put up whatsoever it means for however long it means. But I also wanted to say about Muller Plaza is that the Westcott lot is really a perfect canvas for this. It is not in any pedestrian's way. It is visible for both pedestrians and people driving down Main Street. It is just a blank canvas. I think if we had it in Muller Plaza, I am not necessarily equipped to come up with funds to figure out a way of how to make freestanding things for this sort of size of memorial. So that's what I would say about Muller Plaza, is I wouldn't necessarily be interested in doing it there. I don't want to be in pedestrians' way of going to the farmer's market or engaging in their community. I want people to be able to walk by it. I want it to be very visible. I think that if it was in Muller Plaza, that's a little bit set back. I think that it would be a really beautiful sentiment to have it very visible to everybody. And that's all I'll say for now.
Okay.
I do have,
Now,
I have a question now.
right ahead.
Where did the 1 week come from versus say a 3 week stand? It doesn't make, to my mind, it doesn't make any difference. As long as the quality of the display remains attractive, I don't know what we gain by saying 1 week versus 3 weeks. So that, what Elizabeth just said, saying the original proposal was for a 3 week stay, I don't know where it was, what curtails it to 1 week, whether that's an escape clause or in some way, shape, or form minimizing the impact of it.
I think that maybe what got confused was that these are images that are printed on cardstock and laminated. And then the art part was to include greenery and flowers to this memorial. My idea was that after about a week, the greenery and flowers, they're totally toast. They need to come down, would look unsafe. So at that point, I would come and take down all of the greenery and flowers. All of the portraits I would hope to remain up for, honestly, if this could go on for longer, it would, but I understand the need for having a hard line, which is why I suggested the 3 weeks. I assumed that after 3 weeks, having been in the sun all day long, possibly rained on a couple times, I don't want anything unsightly on our main street or just ratty patty. So 3 weeks is a good estimate of what I assumed would be for it to not be unsightly. So I think maybe a week came from where I suggested I would take the greenery and flowers part down. The portraits would remain up, I would hope, for 2 weeks after that.
Well, my question remains, where did the 1 week come from?
That, well, what Elizabeth just said is consistent with my understanding. My recollection of the conversation was Elizabeth saying that she thought the lifespan of the materials was going to be 1 week. Apparently, my interpretation of that was all of the materials. I wasn't, apparently her interpretation or what she was communicating was only some of the materials. What I heard was all the materials. So that's where the difference came from. So the council can consider a change to that, along with a change that Len is requesting. So let's take one thing at a time. Len, do you have language that you want to change this motion to read?
Well, again, I'm going to ask the city attorney to just kind of guide the wording if I'm off base, but basically I would like to amend this motion number 9 to include that we utilize the existing guidelines that are already established in Muller Plaza, and that we're just annexing the Westcott lot fence for the use of this artistic display. The time period of that, I don't know if that's included in the guidelines at Muller Plaza or not.
It's not.
Is it?
No.
Okay. So I guess that's going to be open for discussion with the council, but hearing what John is saying and others, maybe a compromise of 2 weeks. The artist is saying that she doesn't necessarily believe that this time period is critical, that maybe if we want to move it down so that our student residents have an opportunity to observe it, that might also be there. But at this point, I'd also would like to add to the amendment that Councilmember Drenick's idea of having the Community Advisory Board have some kind of a display representing where Oneonta is moving forward to. I think that would be critical also.
Okay, so, David, if you want to give me a quick addendum to that motion that just states that it is treated as an extension of the Muller Plaza permit, that would be great. David can weigh in on this. I don't think it's needed, the motion to actually include the additional display that includes the Community Advisory Board and other things, because the content is not part of the approval.
Correct.
And then the other issue is, what is the council's position on changing the time frame from 1 week to 3 weeks? Why don't we just see a show of hands? How many people are comfortable with increasing it to 3 weeks? Raise your hand. Okay, I see a majority there, so we can change that to 3 weeks. So David, I guess this would be what you'd call a friendly amendment. I will turn it over to you.
When you say David, I assume you mean David Risberger?
Good try.
Oh, okay. No, if that's, I don't know who made the original motion. We should go to the person whoever made the original motion and ask that they accept it as a friendly amendment, and then it then be seconded and voted upon.
Does anybody remember who made who moved it?
I believe that was me, and I would certainly welcome the changes.
I
And
would
we'll need
second
that-
it.
Okay, there we go. Once again, there should be a discussion, not a vote.
Any further discussion?
Not for that.
Okay, well, don't we want to read the new motion before the discussion, David?
If there's some question as to what the motion was, my understanding would be that it was approved on the fence for a period of 3 weeks, and that the same terms and conditions relating to the permitting would be the same as those currently used for the Muller Plaza.
Okay. Is everybody clear on what that says now? Good. Any
Mr. Mayor,
further-
my stuff broke out. What's the exact language on the
David, you
on the
want to
motion?
repeat that?
Because like I said, I cut out and I apologize.
Okay, you got to stay awake, Scott. Come on.
3, 2, 1. The motion would be to allow the display along the Westcott lot fence for a period of 3 weeks, and that the terms and conditions of issuing a permit for that display would be the same as those currently in place for the Muller Plaza.
Okay, now discussion. Risberger.
Just a quick question. Are we removing the beginning July 25th? And the reason I'm asking is, well, number one, David did not say that when he read it back, which that's fine with me. But if we're leaving that in, is 4 days enough to make the change to include the task force and all the information that's being put in that of what Oneonta is doing now? Is that enough time?
Well, I heard Mark Drenick say it was short, but he would get it done.
Yes, Elizabeth, it seems clear that you're more than willing to sit down and work on making certain that this works with your larger piece of art. And Chief, I feel pretty certain that we can arrive at language that Elizabeth would also think makes sense, and that ultimately the mayor thinks makes sense. And then I will give it to somebody at my shop, and they'll do it.
Okay, it's good to have people.
It is.
I have a
Lepari show.
You're muted, Katie. I heard that.
So I just wanted to clarify that we are extending the permitting process for this installation to the Westcott lot. And then potentially this council will consider the updated permit that was provided by our city clerks in a committee for ongoing. David Merzig, was your concern that then we open up all public property, or are you just saying we need to be clear that we are kind of annexing the Westcott lot?
What I meant by the motion, so we don't have to talk about the motion again particularly, is that it be extended for this use consistent with the current consistent with the current permitting process. If the council should then consider as to whether or not this is going to be a venue that they're going to use on a regular basis. The problem is if you got to either jump or not jump. Can't say it's difficult to be in a situation where we say, okay, we're going to do this one time, and then we're never going to let it do it again. So I would like to extend it to the Westcott lot for this purpose, and then we will move forward. I don't know if that helped.
Yeah, because currently, and so that was my line of thinking too, is if this installation would have passed the permitting process in Muller Plaza, it would be up, right? But because of the structural need, it just needs to be somewhere else. So basically what we're saying about any other group coming and being able to, and you know, when we say any other group, I think we're all clear that, you know, it may be a marginal opinion, something that we don't necessarily support as a city, but then based on First Amendment rights, they would have equal protection under the law to be able to display whatever they wanted. What I'm getting at is currently they're able to do that in Muller Plaza anyway through this current permitting process, and all that we're doing is extending the footprint.
Yes, and the council should promptly make a determination as whether this is some place that you want to go on a permanent basis or not. That's all.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Rafter, were you looking to speak?
Yes. I understand now that Elizabeth is, you're developing the floral arrangement, and you're undertaking the expense of that. And given that the flowers will trash out or tank, would you be open to donations to extend, to supply addition, a longer set of floral arrangements for the sign? Because you have a lot of support in the council, I'd be happy to donate towards that, and I'd certainly go to other council members who are supportive of this, and any other people who might like to have the beautification of the and the softness in a way that's provided by a floral arrangement, and a beautiful one, I'm assuming.
John, I don't mean to be rude, but I think the city attorney is going to cut you right off because we're going outside the contents of the motion. So if we could discuss that later with Elizabeth. I'm more than willing to have
I'm
that.
sure,
Are
I'm sure
you
she'll take your
speaking,
money.
Len, for the attorney?
What's,
No,
I understand he's
John.
very verbal.
Well, again, I frankly, I have to agree with him that I'm sure she'll take your money, John.
If I could say very plainly that I have no interest in making any of this look bad, and I am happy and comfortable with the upkeep of its maintenance to keep it beautiful. I know that not all of you are floral designers, so there is a really awesome greenery that I use that lives out of water for a really long time as in it can look pretty great for about a week in the hot sun without any water. The flowers are
And frankly, I don't want to interrupt here either.
No,
But again,
okay.
now we're talking about content. And
Okay.
Content is what we gotta get away from.
Okay.
Okay.
Talk about process, not content.
I just wanted to clarify, but I'm not interested in making anything look bad.
Mr. Mayor, I say let's just call the vote.
But let Katie talk first.
Lepari Shu,
No, I was just gonna say that I saw the chief's hand go up during this discussion, and so I just wanted to make sure that he was able to be heard if he still wanted to be before we vote.
Dave just kind of said you're not talking about content anymore, so my opportunity's been lost.
if there's no further discussion, I'm going to call for the vote. Councilmember Murphy,
Aye.
Councilmember Davies,
Aye.
Councilmember Risberger,
Aye.
Councilmember Lepari Shu, Councilmember Carson,
aye.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Rafter, Councilmember John Rafter,
Aye.
and Councilmember Drenick.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you all very much.
Could I ask Ms. Patterson to make sure to go to the clerk's office and file the application for the permit? That would help facilitate everything.
Yes.
Elizabeth, reach out to us online. We're not open. You can't get into City Hall.
That's great. I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
A supplemental agenda went out for an additional item of business. I have a little concern with it and looking at it just before the council meeting. The deputy clerk sent it out. It was a 30-day advance notice from the SLA of an application from, I believe it was the Pale Horse. What the message that, if I recall correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, I think it said that it was an amendment to an already approved license. The looking at the application, it is checked as a new application, not an amendment.
Back,
In addition, go ahead.
I didn't want to cut you off. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Back in April of 2019, the previous council heard the 30-day notice to the SLA and approved it. They submitted their application, and prior to a decision being made by the SLA, apparently the COVID happened, and they needed to tick a box that permitted them to have the outdoor seating requirement, which is why you'll see the change in Sidewalk Cafe. I don't know if it was a delay in their filing, if it was a delay in the SLA making a decision, but that is why it is ticked as a new application as opposed to an amended license application, because it was not actually finalized by SLA prior to COVID.
So you're saying it is a new application. That's what it says, new application. So it is a new application, I assume. If it says that, that's what it is.
It's new, yeah. We've already approved, we as in the city have already said, yeah, we have no issue. It's an existing license application that was returned to them to say, yes, you should have checked this box because of COVID. So it's their
Now-
existing application, but
Now, this is a new application that is asking for approval to establish an outdoor cafe on Water Street. My concern is that this is someplace we have not yet gone. We have submitted a municipal plan to the State Liquor Authority to allow only for outdoor seating of alcohol consumption by bars on Main Street during certain hours. They're asking for outdoor seating for serving alcohol on Water Street at any hour. So I'm going to, if there's no objections from the council, and I'll let the chief speak here. Go ahead, chief.
I just want to say, I believe that location is at the far end, and I don't believe it's on the street itself. There's a little right under, like if you're going over the walkway, it's on the right. It's that brick area. It's not within traffic. I don't know if that was made clear or not.
and I believe they have their own portion of sidewalk prior to it hitting public sidewalk, if I understand their description correctly. It's not a large portion, but
That's possible, but it's not like within the traffic or in the traffic pattern.
Right. No, I got
I
that.
just didn't know if that was clear.
You know, that's helpful, but my concern is that under COVID, we have gone so far as to tell the SLA that we are permitting bars to have outdoor serving on Main Street only during certain hours only. This is an application to go beyond what we've ever done or have been proposing, which is to have outdoor serving by a bar at a different location on different hours. So for that reason, I think that before we waive our 30-day notice, we need some opportunity for the council to review and discuss this, because it is taking us to a place that we have not previously agreed to go. And Mark, if you want to weigh in on this, Drenick, please do.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mary. I must admit I slipped away from the conversation for a quick second. If you wouldn't mind bringing me back to the last two sentences of that.
Yeah, no, it's just the application that the Pale Horse is submitting an application to the SLA to be able to, based upon COVID-19 circumstances, to serve alcohol outdoors on Water Street, not necessarily closing traffic, but outdoor serving on Water Street under all hours of the day or night. This is something they certainly can apply for. It may not be permitted by our code. And it's not permitted by the current plan that we have submitted to the SLA.
Yes, that's correct. It's not.
What I'm saying is, because it's not permitted with our code, I'm hesitant to just waive our 30-day period to comment on this. We should take some time to discuss whether this is a change in our code that we want to make to allow all hours of the day, any day of the week, outdoor serving of alcohol on any location in the city. So this is a change that the council can consider, but I'm just suggesting that we're not going to consider waiving our 30-day comment period when it's not in compliance with our code. If anybody feels strongly that they want to waive our 30-day comment period, I can ask for your approval for that. Councilmember Murphy?
Just for clarification, I apologize, Mayor. So are you asking us to table it for now so we have a little bit of time to discuss it?
My inclination is to remove asking the council to waive their 30-day comment period from the agenda. But if there is a majority of the council feels otherwise, that they want an opportunity to waive that, I will include it on the agenda. So unless, so if if there's I'll look for a raise of hands. Are you looking to comment, Glenn?
Yeah, so if I understand this correctly, but in 30 days, the proprietor goes ahead and applies to the state liquor authority? Is that?
My understanding, and maybe the clerk
Oh,
can correct
you
me if
are.
I'm wrong, or maybe David can correct me. They've already applied. We typically have 30 days to comment on this. We can waive that 30-day period so that they can get their approval immediately.
Right, and that's what you're asking for. The original motion or the addended motion was waiving that 30-day period, but you're asking to go ahead and make questions for 30 days.
That's correct. David, do I have that correctly?
That's correct. Again, it's not a motion per se. The SLA makes the final determination on its own, regardless of what our position is. But they always give the locality an opportunity to make comments to the SLA as to whether or not they have any issues with the issuance of the liquor license, and obviously we'll consider those prior to the issuance. But you can waive the 30 days if you want. You don't have to waive the 30 days, and you can make comment within the 30 days. It's up to the municipality to decide, but the SLA makes the final determination.
Right. I mean, it doesn't look like they're at too much of a rush. The original application was March 20th of 2019.
No, they just, I believe this application was just submitted July 20th. It's a new application. That's where I'm confused, because they're calling it an amended application, but it's clearly sent as a new application. There's a lot of questions on this. I just don't think we should be waiving our 30-day period.
Mayor.
Yes, so I'm going to give Dave Risberger a chance first. He has his hand up.
Thanks, Mayor. I remember this group when they came to Oneonta, came in front of the council last year. So I'm wondering if they went forward with their application before they were actually ready to open. But I honestly don't know. But my question is, if this serving alcohol outside would be against our code, can anybody tell me what was done to allow the Red Caboose, when the Red Caboose restaurant was open, to serve alcohol outside in Muller Plaza? And how does that differ?
It differs because our code allows restaurants to serve beer and wine outside.
Okay.
And they're applying for an application to serve all types of alcohol, including hard liquor, as a bar outside.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mark Drenick.
My question, I guess, is just is it an either or? Is it a 0 or 30 days, or do we have some option of having like a 2-week review option?
The state says that we have 30 days to respond. It could be 1 day, it could be 29 days, it could be 30 days, whatever you want. If we make no response, or if we want to make a response, it has to be done within 30 days, or waiving it.
Okay, because my question, I guess, is I don't know what their plan is, but having alcohol served in an open air environment is obviously going to be a safer bet than cramming people into an establishment, and I wonder, if that's something that we want to be discouraging, or if that's something that we can, with a plan in hand, maybe come to an opinion upon in a shorter amount of time.
Well, I think it's a complicated matter, and there's a lot of contradictory issues to look at. On the one hand, it's safer outdoors. On the other hand, it will allow the bars to increase the number of people that they can serve. With college students returning, do we want to create a situation where all the bars on Water Street and other streets can serve more people. So I think there's complicated pros and cons here that need to be looked at.
Can I just follow up on following your train of thought there? I know that the chief was talking about the concern about house parties, how that's really going to be a strict enforcement issue moving into the school year, and I think it's pretty clear, it should be, that it's either going to be that folks are served in an environment where there's some level of supervision, or they're going to be trying to figure out how they can have a house party without getting in trouble.
You know, right now, there are more questions than we have answers. And, you know, I'm only saying that because there are more questions than answers, it is my suggestion that we don't waive our 30-day comment period. We normally do that when there's no questions to be asked. It's a straightforward thing. If majority of the council doesn't want to object to waiving our 30-day comment period, that'll be the case. As a matter of fact, why don't I just, I'll just throw it out there as we normally do. There is a request from we've received notice, 30-day notice from the State Liquor Authority that the Pale Horse has submitted a new application to serve liquor, beer, and wine outdoors. And there's a request that we waive our 30-day comment period to the SLA. If there are no objections, we will notify the SLA that we waive our comment period. Does anybody object to us waiving it by a show of hands?
Me.
Okay, so I think we have, it looks like, you know, at least half, if not more, of the council objects. So based upon that, we will not waive our 30-day period, and then we'll put together some discussion about this as we go forward. Any additional business? Councilmember Murphy.
Just real quick, I wanted to announce that we will be having another virtual board meeting on the last day of the month, the 31st, which I believe is a Friday. I've reached out to everybody I have contact information for in Ward 1. If you're watching this and haven't gotten any information, please feel free to reach out to me at lmurphy@oneonta.newyork.us, and I'll be happy to send you some information about our meeting, which will be at 7 o'clock on July 31st, virtually.
Okay. Chris Berger.
Yeah, one item that I would like to have put forward on the planning committee agenda at our next meeting. It's been brought forward to me by a couple people that there's concerns that we have parking in the Deed Street parking lot. A lot of people going downtown, especially on Saturday mornings for the farmers market. And if you're following the current guidelines, especially with trying to stay socially distant from people, it's hard to walk from the Deed Street parking lot down to Main Street to the sidewalk. You then have to walk all the way down to Deet Street and then cross and then walk back to Muller Plaza. So the request was, why don't we have a crosswalk right near the bank where that alleyway comes out on the Main Street from the Deet Street parking lot? And it could go right across the street, right to there. It would run basically between the two parking lots that we have that tie into Main Street. So if nobody has any objections, I'd like to move that and put that onto the agenda of the next committee meeting.
Okay. I will tell you that when Main Street was renovated about 5 years ago, part of the original plan was to put a crosswalk right at Muller Plaza because there's a bump out there. And so that would be an appropriate place for a crosswalk. It was decided against because the state law is that all traffic must stop for pedestrians in a crosswalk, being its proximity to Deet Street and the amount of truck traffic and traffic that we have on Main Street, that causing cars to stop at that in front of Muller Plaza, in addition to stopping at the Deet Street intersection, would cause traffic problems, but we can explore it further. Any further discussion?
Mayor, this is Ginny. May I speak?
Yeah, let me just let Len Carson's got his hand up, and then I'll give you a chance.
Thank you, Gary. First off, I just wanted to thank you and John for informing us and informing the public about the passing of Ruth Allen. She truly was a community member, very thoughtful, very kind individual. So just I wanted to remember Ruth. Also, I wanted to ask, are we going to be moving forward on the city manager's position? I think the last I knew, we had broken up into two different groups. The odds and the evens, we'd gotten together. I don't think we've done it virtually. And I'm just wondering from your perspective, Gary, where you thought we should be going on that.
My recollection is the last communication was that I had sent out a document or documents to the council to review. One was a discussion about what it means to be hire an administrator versus a manager. And the other was a copy of the job description, which I had dug out, which was developed during the last search. I had sent out to the council for review. I believe, if I recall correctly, I had one comment back. I think it was from Katie Lepari-Shu saying, and I heard no other comments on it since then.
Okay.
So I can send that, we can pick up where we left off. I can send that out again and ask for comment on it. I thought it was a good starting point.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any other issues? Scott?
Yeah, just a follow up to that. As we get ready to start doing the budget and stuff, is that just don't need an answer tonight, just throwing it out there. Is that something we want to try to put money in the budget for next year for the salary and stuff, or are we looking for maybe trying it the year after, where we know where we end up with the situation that we're in right now, trying to face and not knowing what we're going to have coming at us in January? Just a thought to go along with that.
Well, Jenny already has that as an issue for discussion in the preparation of the budget. You know, what to put in, you know, on that line. So yes, that'll be something clearly up for discussion very, very soon. And that is probably a good segue to Ms. Ginny Lee, our finance director.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's an excellent segue. I just wanted to chat about the budget process a little bit. If I can just have a few minutes, Mayor, if that's okay. At the Finance Committee meeting last week, I provided the language that's in our charter that outlines our budget process. I would ask for all council members to refresh on that process so they can know what to expect. I also had shared some of the non-technical information that's not outlined in the charter with the Finance Committee, which if I can just have a couple minutes, I would like to share with the entire council. I just want to let you know that the distribution of materials to the department heads is in progress, and we're going to try to do everything electronically this year and exchange no paper. And Deputy Director of Finance, Joe Temming, will become very involved in the budget process this year. We're going to be working together to bring the proposed budget to the mayor and the common council. So you will be hearing a lot from Joe. He will be attending all the meetings with us. And I've, just so you know, I've asked each department head to begin the process for 2021 as if it were a normal year. But also I want them to understand that we need to emphasize essential. That's kind of the theme that I would like for the 2021 budget. Is it essential? Do we absolutely have to have it? But I also want them to list their needs so we can be well informed of what type of items we may be postponing. And the special budget meetings or starting a council meeting 1 hour early have been done in the past. I prefer special council meetings to be scheduled, and the reason I say that is because there's a lot of information to go over. And the information can be overwhelming, it can be voluminous, and I just want to let you guys decide how you want to present it, but I just want to let you know what we have done in the past. At the first meeting, we usually present a 5-year history and a 5-year projection, and we usually talk about the general fund in one meeting because that fund covers a lot of information. The next meeting, we will usually cover the water and sewer funds and other funds. And I have detail and summary. I have some council members who request detail, others choose to have just summarized highlights. Both type of informational reports will be available depending on your preference. I was hoping for tonight to discuss what you would like to have the targets of the budget. And what I say by that is the financial targets and the previous targets. I'll just give you some examples. It was requested by the council members that the budget be balanced, that no fund balance would be used to balance the operating expenditures. However, I don't think that's going to be realistic for 2021 due to the COVID effect, but we will see how the year progresses. And just a sideline, we got our May sales tax check today or yesterday, and it was about $229 higher than last year. So it was a really good check to receive to see that we did not have any revenue loss for the month of May. And year to date, we are down about $147,000. Another finance target that was established in the past was to maintain compliance with the New York State real property tax cap. The debt service expenditures were not to exceed 5% of the general fund expenditures. The general fund restricted fund balance would not be less than 35% of the expenditures. And they also set wage increase targets. And what I mean by that is the unions we have union contracts with all of our collective bargaining units. So those wages will be set based on the contract. And as I explained to the finance committee, even if the grid went up 1% or 2%, as the employee goes up the grid, their wage increase may be greater than that particular percentage just because of the growth in the steps. But what the council is able to do is set wage targets for the non-unionized employees. We also need to establish meeting dates. If you would like me to put together a suggested schedule and send it out to everyone, I can do that. I would also like to request the Common Council to provide what their priorities are so we can make sure that once we start developing the budget, we've got your priorities in mind. I would also like some guidance on the proposed tax levy increase that you would like. If you were participated in the 2020 budget discussions, I'm a strong supporter of slow, steady increases. And then I would also like to talk about the modification of the process since we do not have a city manager and that position has a role within the charter. And I would very much like to just have your permission for me to fulfill that role unless you've got something else in mind. And I just wanted to put that out to all of the council members. I know the meeting's been long, it's late, but I can communicate with everybody via email. I can send out a suggested meeting guidelines, but I just need some feedback from you as far as what you're looking for.
Well,
Thank you, Mayor.
Jenny, certainly a lot of important decisions to be made here. This is not the time to be diving into them. I
Correct.
suggest that, I'll leave it up to, of course, the council, but I would suggest we start off with one relatively short meeting, an hour meeting, to just lay out the process and the issues ahead of us, not to dive into the details. And then schedule further meetings based upon what everybody sees is required going ahead. I think I would be hesitant to jump into a 3-hour meeting with buried in details and just have a 1-hour meeting laying out what the issues are that the council needs to address and what educational pieces you want to be able to provide as we go forward, if that's agreeable to everybody.
That sounds wonderful to me, Mayor.
Are you comfortable doing it before a council meeting at 6 o'clock, or would you prefer have a separate meeting altogether? I'm seeing shaking ahead for separate meeting. Does everybody want a separate meeting? Okay, so Ginny, why don't you just send out a few options on a time, a date and a time for a separate meeting people can choose from when they're available. Let's shoot to keep this first meeting to an hour so that we just really focus on letting people know, because everybody's new at this. It's important that people just understand what their options are, what the process are, what process is. Let's make it a big picture meeting before we dive into details.
Yes,
So,
I very much agree. Thank you.
So why don't you just send out an email to everybody with a few potential dates and times and see what we can agree upon.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks. Judy, Greg, anything you want to add before we close? I know you've been sitting there quietly behind your names.
I hate to say anything, but I will just say that at some point we'd like to have a conceptual plan presentation to the council related to the DRI Transit Hub project, and that's something that maybe we should discuss not tonight, but by email when that might take place.
Good. Dave Risberger?
Yeah, sorry, one last question. Is there any change or update to the Ford dealership building, the 12 Tribes building?
There's no change. There's an update. The Delaware Engineering, I believe, has either already submitted their request and along with their structural analysis and their justification for a request to permit demolition to SHPO, and awaiting the next steps.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Judy, you there? Anything you need to add or want to add? Okay. Murphy?
Very quickly, I just wanted to thank Greg and all who participated, who was responsible for fixing the sign down on East End Ave. I heard back from the same constituent. They said it looks great. So thank you very much.
If there's anything else, if nobody has anything else, I don't see any hands up. So if there's nothing else, thank you all. We are adjourned.